I believe that the New York Times called the race before one vote was even counted, and it was like record time. I think it was like 3 minutes. And then everyone was like, all right, well, that's all we need to see here. Donald Trump is the winner, and Nikki Haley has now lost 4 times consecutively if you count Nevada. So I would love your opinions on, at this point, why Nikki Haley would still be in the race. Because if it's me, I'm like, I don't even want to go to South Carolina. I'm going to be embarrassed. Like, I would rather not have that on the record. He's going to beat me by like 30, 40 points. And this is just going to be really embarrassing. So I'm just going to gracefully bow out before that actually happens. And she was like, nope, bring it on. I can't wait to get defeated. And then when I do get defeated, I'm going to turn around and pretend like I somehow won. And that's, interestingly enough, just what we've seen her do. And it's just very bizarre to me.
Yeah, I mean, let me give you the alternate take on this, because you're right. The question is, why would she still stick around is a really good one. However, I will say the alternate is also a pretty good question, which is why wouldn't you stay around? In the next 8 days, 20 states vote. She's come all of this way. She has to wait 8 more days to get into Super Tuesday and get through a total of 20 states, including Michigan and a couple others.
And just lose more.
And she's gonna lose more. But she will pick up some delegates. I mean, she even picked up a few in South Carolina. She picked up a few in New Hampshire. And again, the only play for her at this point is to try to be the alternative in case the Trump thing completely falls apart for whatever reason. God forbid, some sort of health crisis, or more likely some legal scenario where they decide to throw him in a gulag. I don't know what's going to happen in the next. Now, I would even say if that occurred, she still wouldn't get the nomination.
Right.
However, she would have some delegates to argue with and maybe get some concessions, or who knows. I mean, with her at this point, I think she's already burned. I think we'd all agree. She's burned all of her, whatever MAGA sort of street cred she had left from her time serving in the administration. So at this point, another week, no one's going to remember this. She still has enough money to get through a week. Why not see what happens? I think that's the only reason why you go forward at this point, though.
Yeah, Pat, I was watching her speech that I mentioned previously. I was watching her speech, and it was just, she was saying, like, the words were encouraging words, but her tone and the look on her face indicated that she didn't even believe the words that were coming out of her own mouth.
Well, you can't. You can't. You can't even believe yourself in that particular instance. I thought it was amazing. Trump won 60-40. The headline in the Drudge Report was 40% of Republicans don't want Donald Trump. Like, it's her home state. He beat her by 20, and it was probably much worse. Democrats crossed the aisle and voted in this to help her out, and still lost by 20 in her home state. It's a bloodbath. I mean, it's ugly and it's embarrassing. And, like Stu says, I guess why not stick around till Super Tuesday? The only downside of that maybe is running out of money. The Koch network cut her off.
Yep.
And so that's not a good sign. And maybe she's getting some ill will in the Republican Party, but there's going to be new leadership. I don't know. I don't know how much it hurts her, but it seems fruitless at this point.
Yeah, just embarrassing. Okay, so Pat, to your point, I want to play, I think we have a clip here of one of the Democrats who turned out to vote for Nikki Haley. Watch.
I voted for Nikki Haley. Simply to, maybe cancel out one of the Donald Trump votes. And that is because this is heavy Donald Trump support in our state. I don't understand it.
You don't understand Donald Trump support in South Carolina. Do you know your state, ma'am? Do you know your state? You see this and you're just like, why do we not have closed primaries in certain states, including here in Texas? So you can't just go cancel out someone's. If you're a Democrat and you're like strategically trying to cancel out someone's vote.
I mean, I don't understand it really. I mean, I get the idea is, of course, when you get to a general election, you want candidates that are appealing to not just Republicans, right? Like, so I get why they did it. Or I would say, especially maybe independents, you might want to let in at times, maybe in certain states. But it doesn't make much sense to let Democrats come across. They're not going to be voting in the best interest of the party. I will say for Nikki Haley, though, I don't think it hurts her really at all. I think any damage that has happened with Nikki Haley has already happened. Her future is not as a MAGA Republican. It's not as a Donald Trump ambassador anymore. That's not going to happen. Her future is probably like the future of Paul Ryan, like serving on the board of some major corporation where she makes a lot of money. And so I don't think staying in this race really hurts her from that point. And I will say too, I don't think it hurts Donald Trump either. What does he need to do? Go to states that you would go and campaign in anyway, like Michigan. He should be campaigning in Michigan anyway. Yeah, sure, go show up there. Don't show up anywhere else. You're going to win by default. You don't need to run a primary campaign anymore. He knows that. He doesn't need to spend any money on that. Just spend money on dual purpose type campaigning, and he should be fine. I think you can look at this and say, the Drudge headline is an interesting one because it's like, if Donald Trump were if Joe Biden won a primary 60-40 against, some candidate, we'd all be like, wait a minute, this is crazy. This is really bad for Joe Biden. But Trump isn't really a pure incumbent, right? Like he kind of is an incumbent. Like if it was just an open primary, if you go back to 2016, a 60-40 win in South Carolina would be amazing. Mm-hmm. And Trump is kind of in the middle there. I mean, there is some opposition to Trump in this party, but like, it's his party, right? Like Ronna McDaniel, who is, by the way, also a Trump choice, stepping down, and Laura Trump being named to one of the top couple of positions there shows whose party this is. It's his. It's his for as long as he's around. If I don't know, even if he loses in 2024, I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the ballot in 2028. Like it's just his until he's gone, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, I think. Regardless of Nikki Haley's actions right now, she's still I just went and early voted. I had all options available to me. It's not like because she says I suspend my campaign that they remove her from the ballot. People would still have the opportunity to vote for her regardless at this point. So it really, to your point, doesn't really affect Donald Trump in that way. He's going
to win either way. Yeah. I don't think it drains his resources. Yeah. I think we sometimes just make too much out of whether she's in or she's not. Who cares, right? Like she's not going to win.
Yeah.
I think for her particular purposes, if she could get to somehow winning 5 states, that's a big. I think this, if I remember the rules correctly for the RNC, I think it's 5 states she has to win to actually be on the ballot at the convention. There might be some value. Like if she could win Hawaii, Delaware, I don't know, win 5 states somehow, there might be some value to her because then she could at least make an argument at the convention. But winning 0 states,
she's not going to.
You can't.
Not win anything.
I don't see any states. I would say the 2 she was maybe best positioned to win were New Hampshire and South Carolina, and she lost by 11 and 20. Mm-hmm. Now look, I was actually surprised to see her at 40%. I thought that number was higher than I thought. I thought she'd be maybe mid-30s, maybe low 30s. I thought it maybe could even be a 70-30 type election. Mm-hmm. 60-40 is still a blowout, though. If it's still it's still a one-on-one contest. And how many times have we heard? And I've even looked at back in 2016. I know I said it. It would be really interesting to see Trump against one candidate and to see what would happen. Well, we've seen it in 2024, and what happens is he wins by a lot.
Yeah. And you know what? She's just irritating me at this point.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I just don't want to look at her anymore. I don't want to hear from her, and I don't want to look at her. Just go home. Just go home, please.
I totally agree, Pat.
I'm just irritated. Go away.
Speaking of going home, Stu, you mentioned Ronna Romney McDaniel stepping down as the RNC chairwoman. And Laura Trump is, of course, being floated as one of the people. What are your thoughts, Pat, on Laura Trump taking over that position, if that is what happens?
Well, like Stu said, it's kind of Donald Trump's party at this point. So that doesn't surprise me. And the Trump family is pretty much in charge. Could have gone to any of his kids, I'm sure, or any of his daughters or sons-in-law, and it would have been the same situation. He's in total control now, and I don't think it'll change much.
Well, I just can't imagine. I mean, I like Laura, but I can't imagine the RNC being anything that anyone should ever consider donating money to ever again. Like,
But other than
not that, yeah, not that I ever would advocate or have advocated for anyone to donate to the RNC, but I mean, to see how that money was being spent. Hopefully she can reform it, but it's almost like, is it beyond repair at this point, just from the bad reputation that I think it should have, at least. If the people who are paying attention should feel like it stinks to high heaven and not want to have anything to do with it. But I don't know.
I mean, look, I think when Trump is head of the party, he's going to be able to make decisions based on who he wants. As we said, Ron McDaniel was his choice at one point. She ran her course. He doesn't want to have her anymore. He's going to pick somebody else. I mean, I'm curious if either of you guys worry about this at all, and I'm just throwing this out here very delicately. We did do a lot of complaining about a Bush legacy, where like it seemed like every child seemed to have prominent jobs for some reason. We also complained about the Clintons doing this, and like, well, this is kind of what's going on here. It does seem like we're going down this road, and there's nobody who cares about his name more than Donald Trump. It's on every building, we know. Trump should have people who are executing his vision for the party because, he's the head of the party. And I don't think there's anybody who would say that that's unfair. He's the guy, the top of the ticket. It should reflect his vision. But I don't know, naming 900 of your kids to every position, that's how he's run his business and it's worked well. But I don't know if I'm excited about that per se.
I would agree that the nepotism, I think, is a problem. And it is kind of a conflict of interest to be assigning your kids to those positions of power. But then, I mean, Jared Kushner did a great job at his role when he was in the administration. So it's like, well, where do you draw the distinction between, okay, but this guy earned his keep, and okay, well, just because he's associated with Donald Trump, he's not allowed to have anything to do with it.
Also, the old rules don't apply to Donald Trump. Maybe you've noticed that.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah, none of those rules apply to him.
Yeah.
Any criticism that we had for George W. Bush is not carried over to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
Yeah.
I think too. So, and you can look at the Trump thing and saying well, he probably feels like he can't trust anybody, right? I mean, he has gone through a lot of people.
That's basically
who could
what he said.
Who could blame him though?
Just
who could blame him?
That's what I mean. So maybe I don't know, somebody in my family will do it. At least I can trust them.
Yeah.
I can understand the instinct, but we should we should think about this a little bit before we jump full, both feet into the pool where we're just naming everyone with the last name Trump to every job.
I agree.
It can be concerning, and because I do think you look at some of these polls, who do you want the next presidential candidate to be if it's not Donald Trump? And a lot of them say Donald Trump Jr. It feels like we're just and I don't know, maybe he's the best guy. I don't know, but it does feel like we're going down a road that we should at least be internally observing and making sure that we want this is the road we're choosing. It doesn't just happen to us.
If you like this clip and you want to see the full episode, click here. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, come on, you do. Click here.